Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad to have you here. We're going to get started in just 1 minute, but let's see who we have today. Share where you're from, where you're tuning in from, maybe your role and company in the chat. I, for instance, am coming live from the Boston suburbs. So let me know if and we have any New Englanders out there. Wow, all over. We got Chicago, we have San Fran, Switzerland, Utah, more San Fran. Henry's originally from Boston. I love it. Canada, Minneapolis, New York, SoCal, Tucson, Philly. I used to live in Philly. Chicago again. Wow, all over. Reno, more New York, Scottsdale. A lot of Arizonans today. Great. South Carolina and Charleston, Poland, Guatemala. Great. So, looks like we have a really, really good variety. Oh, Boise, Idaho. My younger brother lives in Boise, and I'm seeing him this weekend. So, Jennifer, wonderful place to visit. All right, let's go ahead and get started. As a quick introduction, I'm John Hunt. I'm the Director of Revenue here at TalentPop and your moderator for today's CXplained panel titled From Delivery to Returns, Creating a Post-Purchase Experience Customers Remember. Every month we host these conversations like this for CXplained, which is our community for CX leaders and operators to share what's actually happening inside their teams so we can all learn from real on the ground experience. Daria will drop a link to the chat if you'd like to join the community right away. Today, we're talking about everything that happens after the buy button: delivery, tracking, returns, exchanges, and the support conversations woven through all of it. This one's for anyone running CX, ops, or fulfillment who already knows the sale isn't finished until it gets over the line. Our angle is the post-purchase experience, is where the loyalty is actually won or lost, and it starts a lot earlier than most brands think. So if you're ready to stay ahead of the curve, give me I don't know, a lightning bolt emoji in the chat right now. While those come in, you'll see a slide on my screen for a partner giveaway. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Feel free to scan the QR code to enter our giveaway. It'll be visible while our panelists introduce themselves. So while the slide stays up, or the giveaway stays up, why don't we do some quick intros, and we'll start with Tim Mitchell over at Zendesk.
Hi everyone, Tim Mitchell here. I'm a strategic program director at Zendesk. I have a background in management consulting, ex-Deloitte, and ran a business that was a partner to Zendesk for a number of years. I'm also a guest lecturer at a couple of international business schools like University of Cape Town and University of Barcelona, and recently relocated from Johannesburg, South Africa to California in the United States. So joining you from the US today.
Nice. Thanks, Tim. That's a short move, only I think about 5,000 miles. So cheers to you for that move. Let's bring it over to Tom Fowle at ShipBob.
I'm Tom Fowle. I'm the manager of solutions engineering here at ShipBob. I've been with the company for 8 years. I've worked on 5 different teams to help brands optimize fulfillment and use that to aid the customer journey and scale their business. I'm excited to talk more about post-purchase today.
Nice. Thanks, Tom. And over to Henry Edwards at Redo.
Yeah, absolutely. I am on our partnerships team here at Redo, one of many of our partnership managers, and speak to Redo just kind of from the platform level. And I'm lucky enough to be a part of events like this, where I get to speak with both brands and work with partners like TalentPop. John, I hope you're a Red Sox fan because it's been a fun run.
14 straight and counting. So yes, absolutely. I went on Sunday.
Oh, that's awesome.
And lastly, thanks, Henry. My colleague Daniel Colahan, who will introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm one of the customer success managers here at TalentPop. Been with TalentPop a little over a year, but have been within the e-commerce industry under sales management as a retention strategist for a little under a decade now. So happy to be a part, and thank you for having me on, John.
Amazing. Thank you all. I'll leave the QR code up for just another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll turn it over to our speakers. So go ahead and scan it before you do. What's exciting about this group is that between the four of you, we basically got the entire post-purchase journey in one room. Zendesk on support and resolution time, ShipBob on fulfillment and delivery, Redo on returns and the post-purchase platform, and TalentPop on the human agents who tie it all together for the customer. Over the next stretch, we're going to unpack how all these pieces fit into one connected experience that actually keeps customers coming back. I'll keep us moving because we have a lot to cover here. So feel free to drop any questions or Q&A that you have in the chat. All right, so getting on, let's set the stage. Before we dig into how each of you handle your piece of the journey, I want to get us all on the same page about what customers are actually expecting the second they hit that buy button today. When we say post-purchase experience, a lot of brands still picture a shipping confirmation email and a returns policy buried in the footer of that. But customer expectations have moved way past that. From where each of you sits, what do customers actually expect after they hit the buy button today? And what do you think is the biggest gap between that expectation and what most brands are delivering? Henry, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest gap there is brands are viewing the returns and kind of the post-purchase field as a cost center and just something of a necessary evil to take care of after, they've collected revenue on that customer. We try to really reframe that at Redo, and tend to think that post-purchase is really the start of the next transaction and getting that customer to come back and become a then returning customer. Um, the default that we've seen with brands previously was that refunds were just the path of least resistance, and just give the customer what they want on that end because it felt like the right thing to do. But oftentimes, the customer is actually just looking for getting their problem solved with the product, whether it was a wrong size or wrong color.
Mhm.
And we're able to actually help drive those exchanges with Redo. And I'll definitely get into that on some of these other questions. But that's really what we're focused on is we know that there's returns are inevitable and that nobody remembers the order that went perfectly. They remember what you did when it didn't. So if there was something wrong with the product, how you're reacting as a company is actually very important to that entire customer journey there, and can actually win you that customer to be a returning customer and increase LTV and all that fun stuff that we like in e-commerce.
So true. Yeah, there's you expect that you click that buy button and you as a consumer don't have to think about that, but every once in a while when it doesn't go correctly, you certainly don't forget about that. I think we can all picture an experience like that in our past. Tom, over to you for the shipping and fulfillment. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think through fulfillment, customers expect the brand to stay present. They expect insight into the process beyond hitting buy. They want proactive engagement that makes them feel like they've made the right purchase. And they want an experience that makes that purchase feel less like a transaction. And closing that gap, the brands with fulfillment aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest logistics budgets. They're the ones who've decided that the post-purchase window is designed to be an experience and not just a handoff to carriers or to a 3PL. They ask questions like, what does the customer see or feel, or what do they hear between checkout and unboxing? And will any of that reflect who we are as a brand?
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree. Tim, how about you?
So, John, I always like to look at the data behind these sort of discussions, and I'm going to have to ask the audience to help me with this one. See if it helps to solve a hypothesis that I have. Simple question, very easy yes or no question to the audience. In the past year, in this age of AI, do you believe that the post-purchase experience has improved or not? Just a very easy yes or no question. And as you respond to that, what I wanted to highlight is that analyst research over the past year has found that 66% of CX leaders believe that customer experience has improved over the past year. But if you ask the customer the same question, only 17% of them agree. So to me, that disconnect is quite staggering. And it means to me that somewhere between what brands think they're delivering and what customers are actually experiencing, there's a huge disconnect. Where that comes in, I believe, is that we need to understand the customer's job to be done. Ultimately, two customers might ask the same question post-purchase, but for completely different reasons. Maybe I'm asking about your returns policy, because I'm getting a gift for a loved one, and I really hope that they like it. Or maybe I'm asking about your returns policy because this is the seventh item of this particular type that I've purchased, and I'm not quite happy with the quality of it, so I'll keep returning it until I get a new one. And understanding the motive, the behavior that sits behind that motivation for customers becomes so key. And ultimately, I think that closing that expectation gap isn't just about adding more AI. We can throw as much AI into the mix as we want, but it's about combining better customer understanding, connected data, and good human judgment that allows us to understand the customer a whole lot better. And last point on this is that some research from Zendesk recently found that 81% of customers expect companies to know who they are and to pick up exactly where they left off. So to me, context is king. That's the number one goal in providing the best possible experience.
Love that. Someone mentioned in the chat, speed has gotten better, yes, but quality, not so sure. And I think that resonates with me. The consumer today is just demanding so much more. Our expectation used to be here, it's now here. I bet next year it's going to be even higher. Daniel, why don't you bring us home?
100%. I couldn't agree with you more, Tim. I think quality is going to be the biggest factor here because what we see across all of our over 750 e-commerce brands, speed is definitely a high expectation across the customer base, but it's that human touch, that engagement that really drives home the quality in that communication. Most customers can be very forgiving with a delay if we already have that initial outreach and communicating that clearly to them. Brands that have the full order history and the context for their agents, allows them to have a lot more personal engagement with the customer. So it doesn't feel as scripted to them. It's one of the first things we look at in one of our audits. We see how fast and how personally most of our brands in their post-purchase support responds. It's not just about speed, it's about understanding the context, understanding the situation, and being able to, engage with that customer, not just from, a number basis of one, from the next customer to the next, but it's almost like reaching out to an old friend that you haven't spoken to in a long time. Just creates that journey, makes it a lot more of an engaging experience.
Love that. All good perspective. I think we can all relate to that as consumers ourselves. Let's shift to the next question. Tim, I'm going to start with you. At Zendesk, you're seeing support conversations across thousands of brands, and post-purchase is where huge share of tickets land. Where's my order? I need to return this. This arrived damaged, things like that. With the resolution platform bringing AI and human agents together, what are you seeing separates brands that turn those moments into loyalty from those that lose the customer right away?
So to me, it's all about how you show up when it matters most. And whether that is by a human or by an AI agent or, some combination of the two, perhaps a hybrid way of doing so. It's the real test isn't whether something goes wrong, but it's how you show up when something does go wrong. And I've got a lovely example behind this that I think brings to bear what I'm talking about over here. I was recently in London running a CX visioning workshop with a number of customers, and we were looking at, when best do you bring in AI? Is there an appropriate time to say, this is best handled by AI versus this is best handled by a human? And in some cases, it was less about the technology, but more about the way in which a sensitive moment is handled. This particular example was a company that specializes in photo books, photo albums, photo calendars, deeply personal item that people have a high level of sentimental value on. And the conversation got really interesting when we said, well, what if there's a problem with the delivery? That type of problem is typically not like a late delivery. That's something that's easily resolved. A big problem is what if I receive the wrong photo book? And
Mhm.
yes, it's mildly annoying that maybe I have someone else's wedding pictures or, photos of their loved ones or something like that. But my main worry as a customer is not why did I get this photo book, but if I got this one, who has the photos of me and my family? And that's quite a deeply personal problem to solve. It's no longer a logistics issue, but it's about trust, privacy, keeping that deeply personal relationship with the company. And what I found was that, coming towards a resolution is showing your understanding, giving peace of mind, giving the empathy that's required to take ownership, build that loyalty, and work together with the customer to resolve it. The systems that this company have in place are human-led, but with the support of AI. And bringing the agent into the mix helps to get to that answer quicker. Ultimately, customers don't expect perfection, but they certainly do expect confidence that somebody owns the problem and sees it through to the end with that personal touch. So I think that's the best way to, provide the thinking around support after the sale, whether it be through AI, human, or a combination.
Totally agree. And that's a really, really good example. And it's a personal example for folks if anyone's tried to make one of those albums before. Tom, I'm going to swing it over to you. So obviously, Tim mentioned they're not looking for perfection, but a lot of that comes down to like what ShipBob is going to be doing. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a large part of what customers are expecting is to be proactive. As you said, it won't be perfect. Fulfillment won't be perfect, but to be proactive, to be providing information and to set expectations really leads to how customers interact with brands and what they expect to happen. If you know that there's going to be certain level of transit time, if you're made aware of delays in the process, you're much more forgiving than when you have to kind of dig and find that information out for yourself.
Yeah, it's so true. I'd much rather get an email, hey, it's coming tomorrow, not today, rather than it not coming today. I have to think about it, dig out my order ID and all that, and then message them and then figure out, 6 or 12 hours later. So Daniel, when those messages are then sent, like how are we thinking about like from a human side, like responding to those?
The great thing in this situation is going to be context in a lot of those situations, right? We never want our customers, repeating the same questions or answering the same questions over and over again. And that context allows a lot of our great post-purchase agents to not only use that when they're engaging with the customers, but allow them to dive deeper into what those scenarios can be. Much like Henry, what you were saying in terms of customers may not just want a standard return. There could be an underlying issue that they want, an alternate product, or just a different styling, or even just a different set of circumstance for how they ordered the product. And a lot of our great post-purchase agents use that context to build from there. And they take notes themselves. They add that additional context into the platform such as Zendesk, and are able to use that previous context to refine that genuine connection with the customers that they're engaging with. And so in that, the whole journey for them is context is king, as you'd mentioned, Tim, but also not just relying on that context by itself. It's diving deeper, engaging further with the customer from there.
Totally true. Henry, why don't you bring us home?
Yeah, Daniel, I think you're spot on with that. With bringing that kind of human connection back in there. When I think about this, I typically go back to the retail side of things, which I know people might not be shopping as much in retail anymore. We're in the e-commerce space. But that being said, if you were to walk into a great retail store, and say you had a jacket that doesn't fit, a good associate there isn't just going to reach into the register, hand you cash, and turn their back and say, "All right, you're taken care of." They will say typically like, "What size do you need?" Or "Let me grab you something. Actually, you want to try this one out too." And half the time you walk out having spent more than the original purchase. That is interaction in retail 101. It's been true for as long as I think people have been shopping. When we moved to commerce online, somewhere along the way, we fired that associate. We replaced them with a form that said refund. And the most valuable conversation in retail, the moment when a customer is trying to tell you exactly what went wrong and is standing there waiting for a solution, e-commerce automated it down to just handing back cash and turning around. Um, and that's not a great way of doing business. So what we've been able to see, at least in 2026, is that AI lets us do this, and we're able to put a great associate in the back room where we're now able to provide an experience like that, for a customer at 2 a.m. across 4,000 different brands who already knows that customer size history, what's in stock, and what other people who have returned this item might have ended up loving instead.
Yeah, really, really good example. And it's just like, it follows the same mindset as we did 20 years ago, going into these brick and mortar stores. And now, the game has changed a little bit though, and consumers are just more picky and they have a lot more options out there. Otherwise, soon you'd have to walk down the street or try to find another one. Now it's just quick Google search, and all of a sudden you've lost that customer forever. Um, Tom, why don't we switch it over to you around the delivery experience? We've talked about everyone's favorite acronym, WISMO, where is my order? It can be 30 to 40% of all support tickets, and quite honestly, over half at its peak. And before we know it, peak season is going to be right around the corner for many of us. From ShipBob's side, the root cause usually isn't a lost package. It's a visibility gap. Walk us through what actually breaks down in the delivery journey and why the moment right after purchase, when customers are checking tracking 7 times for an order, is such an underutilized opportunity for brands.
Yeah, John, you nailed it. WISMO is a symptom. That root cause is usually the misaligned expectations that may never have been connected to the reality of fulfillment. And walking through what actually breaks because it's not what brands assume. An order gets placed, confirmation goes out, and then at that moment, the brand's involvement in the customer experience effectively ends. And what happens next is a chain of handoffs. The merchant system to a 3PL, the 3PL to a carrier, carrier to the first scan to the next facility. And every one of those handoffs, there's a potential gap in visibility. It's not a lost package, it's just a visibility gap. The package is almost always moving, but the customer can't see it. And that's where it starts to compound. The delivery date that the customer saw on the checkout page is probably calculated based on best case assumptions, the right inventory in the right location, the carrier hitting their standard transit times, and no volume surge. And peak will break every one of those assumptions simultaneously. So the date slips, the tracking goes quiet, and the customer's only move is to open a ticket. And that's 30 to 40%. It's not those lost packages, but again, a misalignment of the expectations and invisible shipments. And then as far as how the moment right after purchase can be really valuable, that post-purchase window, the 2 to 5 days between confirmation and delivery, is one of the highest engaged moments in the entire customer relationship, and it needs to be used with intentionality. If we think about the psychology, the customer is just committed, they've spent money, and they're anticipating, and they're checking tracking compulsively, not because they're anxious, but because they're excited to receive their order. And that's an extraordinarily receptive mental state. And brands should avoid serving customers a generic tracking page with no brand presence, no voice, no next step in that moment. If a customer is going to check tracking 7 times per order, like what should they be seeing? And the answer is rarely a progress bar on a carrier page. It's your brand, it's your story, a recommendation for what to buy next, a prompt to join your loyalty program, a moment that reinforces the decision that they made rather than leaving them in a void. The brands who get this right see 2 things happen. First, support ticket volumes drop because proactive visibility removes the anxiety that drives WISMO in the second place. And the second is that the tracking page itself can become a retention surface. It's one of the few moments in the customer journey where engagement is essentially guaranteed. Most brands are paying to resolve WISMO, and the better move is to design it out and monetize that window while you're at it.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's just like we've all done it. We've had really good experiences. We've had really bad experiences. Like I buy from probably the same 5 or 6 websites most of the time, but when I try someone new, it is interesting how different e-commerce brands take like a different approach. Daniel, when everyone's checking, all of their tracking orders, and they have a question and they start reaching out to like one of your agents, how do we think about like what that human touch means to a consumer when they're getting a response?
That human touch is really going to come down to one, the additional context that the agents are working with, and then two, the genuine connections that they can build from that post-purchase journey, right? If we have, that gap that we're seeing across most of our brands, when we run through an audit with a brand, we can see that clear gap when a customer places that order buy and then silence from the brand, right? No communication, no follow-up, no checking in, from the brand's perspective. And we're seeing, so when those issues come through, that customer is already at a frustrated experience. But many of our post-purchase agents or our brand concierge specialists specialize in the scenarios where they outreach to those customers after their purchase and they're able to follow up directly in those scenarios. And from there, even if they can already see that an error is on the account, imagine if you're a customer and you're not aware of an issue that has come through, but one of our brand concierge specialists reaches out to you and says, "Hey, we just noticed that there was a delay or there was an error or there was, something wrong going on with the order. Wanted to reach out to you to let you know what's going on, what the situation is, and how we can best support," right? You're already getting that level of, quality experience. And that's already going to build a lot of brand loyalty from there because it shows to the customer that these brands are looking out for their customers. And many of our brand concierge specialists are trained just exactly for these scenarios.
Yeah, 100%. And that's great. You just appreciate it so much more when you're told something proactively. Tim, anything to add from the help desk side?
I think to me, what stands out is that, the answer to me is all in the metrics. And sometimes we're tracking the right metrics. I think some organizations are doing a great job at tracking the basics like CSAT, NPS, customer effort scores, etc. But where we kind of lose out is tracking the counterfactuals, some of the metrics that we don't always realize are important to the customer. And these are things like, what about time saved for the customer, confidence in their decision, peace of mind that you create for the customer. And there's maybe a story we'll come to in a moment that speaks to a personal experience that I went through that I didn't realize was actually powered by Zendesk at the time. That certainly gave me a lot of peace of mind and confidence as a customer in that overall post-purchase experience.
Absolutely. Henry, let's swing it over to you and let's shift gears a little bit in returns and exchanges. Okay, so maybe there's something wrong with the product, and returns are obviously part of that post-purchase that most brands, treat as quite honestly a pure cost, money going out the door. Redo kind of flips that, using AI to recommend the right exchange instead of defaulting to a refund. What are you seeing across the brands you work with, and how that returns moment done well actually becomes a retention and revenue moment, instead of operating at a loss?
Yeah, yeah, kind of going back to what I was just saying earlier is these customers are coming because they have a problem and it's typically something that they know exactly what it is. It might be a sizing issue or the color, but they know why they didn't like a particular product. And that is actually such a high value moment for a brand to capitalize on because that's rich data that you can receive from customers and actually figure out one, how you can improve your product, but solve their immediate need in that time. So what we've been able to build out is with brands, whether they want to, have their own twist and they know from just their years of experience working with those customers. Um, if someone is typically returning this item, it might be for this, or hey, these items typically are a great upsell here, or those sort of situations. We're just having that brand knowledge they can actually import all of their own knowledge and kind of funnel that into these flows that we have created within Redo, as well as leveraging AI. So we are creating a customer record for each and every one of your customers and understanding, okay, if they return this product because of a size reason, maybe on the order tracking page or in these other post-purchase spots, now we know what sizes to actually provide as an upsell. And just understanding and tailoring that part throughout the entire journey, you start to see not only increases in exchanges versus refunds, you start to see upsells go up, customer experience, customers are happier, and that just creates a natural kind of flywheel. So that's typically what we see on the return side, where if you're able to actually address the problem that they're coming in with, it might be something you can then see across a whole bunch of different customers and maybe even bring back to your manufacturers and just keep that whole flywheel of your business going.
It's so true. And it's just like, I think about this right now. Actually, this shirt I'm wearing right now, I have this in about six different colors. I just found the shirt that I want. And like maybe it was missized when I originally got it. But once I got the correct size, they can utilize that and say, hey, we have this also in these 10 other colors, whatever. I'll say, I'll take that, and that. And all of a sudden, it was an upsell opportunity, confirming that I want to keep the product. And now I know what size to give. I think that's super true. Um, I want to keep us moving and talk about kind of like loyalty leaks. So, like thinking about your own clients and data, where do you most often see brands quietly losing loyalty after that checkout? What's the leak that brands don't even realize is costing them repeat customers? Just a quick example, so we can move on, further onto the panel. Maybe Tim, how about we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll bridge this one with that previous topic we're talking about relating to the human in the loop. Are we measuring the right things? And in many cases, your traditional voice of customer metrics are a good way of figuring out, can we count on this customer to be sticking around in the long term, latching onto that customer lifetime value. But if you're looking at it from a business perspective without looking at it from the customer's perspective, there's a good chance you're going to miss the mark. Quick story on this one. I was in the United States about 2 years ago, needing to fly back to Johannesburg for a client executive meeting that was taking place in a few days' time. Everything was scheduled, everything was looking good. I get to the airport, and every single screen in the airport was just blue, that blue screen of death with the rotating symbol. It happened to be the day of the Microsoft CrowdStrike outage, if some of you may remember that. Basically, every flight was grounded. There was no way to get home. Instead of panicking, there was a product that I was trialing called Hey Jude, which is a product that's actually powered by Zendesk on the back end for customer service. And Hey Jude is basically a personal concierge app. So I reached out, I just sent a voice note, explained the problem that I was in. Here's my passport number, here's my flight confirmation details. It's late in the United States. I need to go to bed. Please make sure that you help me to get a refund and a new trip home by the morning so that I can make it back to this Exco meeting in time. Sure enough, the next morning, I got a message saying that that concierge had been on the line on my behalf for 3 hours. So they had been doing a lot of waiting for me. They had managed to process a refund, and they had three different flight options that would allow me to get home in time. And they said, look, Tim, this is the quickest one, but it's the most expensive. This is the cheapest one, but you'll miss your meeting. Here is the Goldilocks one right in the middle that we believe will give you the best value for money and get you home in time. Now, to me, what this company understood was those counterfactual customer performance indicators, the CPIs, as I like to call them, rather than KPIs. Understanding that I was looking for peace of mind, I was looking for time saved, I was looking for a plan B. These are the types of metrics that a lot of businesses don't usually measure, but that keep me feeling that, perfect. I am going to be a lifelong customer to this product because they've given me exactly what I needed as a customer. And not only do they have my customer lifetime value, but I'm probably going to retell the story 100 times and become an advocate for them based on what they saved for me. So I think that's what really matters. That's how you prevent these churn incidents and really hold on to loyalty for customers.
I love that. And after the meeting, if you can send me who the company is, I'd like to check them out because that's a great story.
Of
We've all
course.
had travel more than annoyances, but nightmares, and that's awesome that like it turned into obviously a good moment for you and during a stressful time. Daniel, let's kind of move like beyond the ticket. We all know agents need to handle the reactive stuff, Wismo, returns, damaged items, the fires that come in every day. But there's a whole other layer most brands aren't staffing for. What about the customer who abandoned their cart and just needs a nudge, or the happy customer who's ready to hear about a bundle or an upgrade, or maybe a frustrated customer who, with the right response and the right offer, could go from a bad experience, like what Tim just talked about, to a loyal repeat buyer? What are TalentPop brands doing in that proactive space, and what does the actual person running these touch points look like?
Great question, John. I think in this particular scenarios, we rely heavily on our trained brand concierge specialists. This is exactly the type of situations that they're built for. They're built for whether it's, getting an abandoned cart, just across the finish line, reaching out to a customer to see how their order has going well, even, weeks after they had already gotten their order, or finding, new discoveries from those engagements, right? The context is what's going to be, important for them, but the experience overall for our brand concierge specialists, if it's a negative experience that the customer is engaged with, they're already trained in those scenarios to be able to win back, those customers, to build those genuine connections from there, right? Context is important, but the brand concierge specialist needs to use that context effectively to build on that engagement. Like you mentioned, guiding the customer for the best way to use the product, recommending another product that may be better suited for their needs, helping them find the right solution for a specific situation. These interactions build trust, strengthen customer loyalty. The person running these touch points is someone who combines customer service with sales. They're empathetic enough to build trust, curious enough to uncover those customer needs, and confident enough to recommend the next best step. They're not simply just closing tickets, they're not just running through, their day. They're creating that additional revenue, they're increasing customer lifetime value and strengthening that long-term loyalty for their brand. Because at the end of the day, they should be treating them just like their best friends, because you want your best friend to have the best experience possible. And that's how our brand concierge specialists treat their customers day in and day out.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love like that proactive touch. It's so it can be such a game changer, and you just never know someone's headspace when they're online shopping. If you can just change that trajectory just slightly, sometimes it makes the difference between getting that sale and not. Henry, let's swing over to you and talk about getting ahead of the ticket. So one thing that stands out about Redo is that you are attacking post-purchase problems before they even become tickets. Free order editing so customers can fix their own orders, clear delivery expectations at checkout, branded tracking that keeps them on your site. That idea that a great post-purchase experience actually starts at checkout, what does that look like in practice, and how much ticket volume can brands prevent just by getting in front of it on the right end?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on with that, John, where the best support ticket is the one that never gets created in the first place. Most brands think of CX as reactive, like how fast can we answer? The better question is, why is that customer reaching out at all? And is it something that we could actually tackle through our website or through our product offering, and kind of get to the root cause of it there? One of the things that we've seen that has just been super helpful for brands is a self-serve order editing. So whether it's a 30-minute window or an hour window after someone's actually placed an order, that cuts down a huge amount of those urgent tickets from customers who are trying to fix their own mistakes, whether it was a wrong address, wrong size, maybe they put in the wrong credit card, and it lets them fix it themselves in 60 seconds, and a ticket never gets created for the CX team, and neither does the frustration. John, as you mentioned too, clear delivery expectations, I would say is a key second part. A real date, if you can actually provide that on a PDP or somewhere at checkout where customers able to understand, okay, I'll get this by, the 27th. That is another way where you're just reducing the amount of customers who are going to end up coming to you and asking, hey, when's my package coming? And then the third is that branded tracking page that we talked about, which is keeping them on the site, and allowing them to just get any answered questions there, rather than sending them to a carrier page and kind of creating a third space for them to head to that's creating a different interaction that your brand might not necessarily want. Um, this makes human agents a lot more valuable, I would say as well too, on the CX side. When agents aren't copying and pasting tracking numbers all day, they're freed up to focus on some of those other tickets, like you mentioned, that are more worth the customer's time, more worth the CX team's time in terms of priority, and actually able to get those faster and more efficient. Whereas, like I mentioned, copy and pasting order tracking links all day is probably not a great use of the CX team's time, or not super great for the customer experience side of things, where that could have been answered on an order tracking page or potentially through order editing.
Yeah, it's that's super intuitive, and it's a very much better experience if they feel like they're a little bit in control rather than being at the mercy of the vendor that they just purchased from. So Tom, let's talk about like from tracking to unboxing. So ShipBob's been busy. You guys have launched ShipBob Promise with delivery dates backed by real network data, TrackBob for branded packages. You're leaning hard into custom packaging, where 55% of shoppers say they're more likely to come back to a brand whose order arrives branded rather than unbranded. Tie it together for us. How does owning those moments, the promise, the tracking, the unboxing, turn fulfillment from a cost center into part of the brand itself?
Yeah, fulfillment becomes part of the brand when the customer can't tell where the product ends and the experience begins. For a long time, fulfillment was invisible by design. You shipped it, it arrived, done. Now the brand, and the brand lived in the product and the marketing there. But now consumer expectations have shifted to the point where the post purchase experience is part of the brand evaluation, whether you've designed it that way or not. And if things go wrong, customers aren't reaching out to a carrier or a 3PL, they're going to reach out to the brand directly.
Mm.
So when you tie those three things together, Promise, Track Bob, and the custom packaging, what you're really doing is extending the brand experience across a part of the customer journey that most brands have historically outsourced and forgotten about. And that's when fulfillment stops being a line item and starts being a differentiator. The brands that we see winning on retention aren't just shipping faster, they're making the customer feel like the experience was designed for them end to end. And for ShipBob, that's what all that work and those features have been building towards.
I love that. Got time for just a couple of more. I want to go straight down the line with just a quick one. If a brand watching today, and we have a bunch of them on the line right now, could make just one change to their post-purchase experience before the next peak season, what's the single highest impact thing you'll tell them to do first? We'll start with Daniel.
I think it's finding those gaps in the customer journey, right? If you're seeing a lot of instances where customers are not getting a lot of engagement, say they're not getting responses over the weekend or just on the off business hours, right? That's an easy gap that we'd be able to find in just a quick audit to see where, these customers are reaching out and where these customers are interacting. And I think finding those gaps is going to be the first step because that allows you to then know, okay, how can we then fill those gaps? Where can we fill in those spaces to bring in a new team member or another specialist to be able to reach out to those customers or be able to refine that for them.
Nice. Tim, what about you?
For me, I think it comes down to a leadership conversation that needs to take place, and ultimately a leadership conversation around automation versus the human touch. Do you feel that you're actually going to add more value by automating that particular interaction with the customer, or will you just be introducing more friction? And there are a number of questions, a number of moments where you can decide this in the post-purchase part of any transaction where, maybe based on the value of that transaction, it's a high value transaction. If someone's buying a car online or a house online, you probably don't want to be automating that. Or if it's a high value customer, perhaps you're in the investment management space, and this is a really valuable customer that you want to make sure that you impress and you keep within your business in a long time. Maybe you don't want to automate that. There could be a number of other decisions that need to be made. It could relate to customer sentiment or the intent. Going back to that photo album example that I gave, something that's deeply sensitive or deeply personal. Some interactions might simply be way too complex, maybe financial related or healthcare related transactions that are quite complicated, very strongly regulated. You probably want to think carefully about automating those. The type of interaction, is it going to be a failure interaction? Is it something that if this goes wrong, that customer is guaranteed to churn? Then maybe you want to think again. And lastly, on risk and governance, if it's got something to do with privacy, legal compliance, financial impact, you want to think carefully about that. So in short, I think it ultimately comes down to how do you make sure you are applying a fit for purpose approach to AI. It's not about a high automation rate, but ultimately it's about a great experience.
Nice. Henry, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I want to give something kind of tactical to the audience here. with the tool that we have at Redo called Recover. And it's exactly what we've been talking about kind of today with bringing the human back into the loop. There is a subset of customers across all brands who abandon checkouts but aren't subscribed to their traditional marketing campaigns, whether it's through Klaviyo or Attentive. And those customers are forgotten about. They kind of fall through the cracks because the automations can't reach them. And the only way to actually reach out to those customers is by having a human manually reach out to them and send them a text. And that's exactly what Recover's doing. So it's really kind of completing the circle of that whole customer group who are super high intent customers, making it all the way to checkout, and not letting them be forgotten about. And whether it's just reminding them that they have something or we're here to help them out, or that there might be an offer on a product that they have within their cart. That's where we're really filling in the gap there. So I think for all brands heading into Q4, where abandoned checkouts are certainly going to rise, as with all site traffic, I think that's a really kind of easy way to find some incremental revenue for you and your teams.
Love it. And Tom, one last nugget for the audience.
Yeah, definitely. I think from the fulfillment side, the leak is a misaligned expectation on the order timeline. And my advice would be to audit the delivery window and the checkout experience, because brands that struggle the most during peak aren't the ones with slow shipping. They're usually the ones who overpromise in October and then spend November managing expectations. That's when "where's my order ticket" spike, the reviews turn, and any customers that we just acquired through a holiday promotion decide not to come back. So if your peak season has a delivery date on your checkout page that you can actually stand behind, you've solved the trust problem before it starts, and everything else compounds from there. The tracking experience is better because you're just confirming something that you've already told the customer to expect. The unboxing lands better because the customer isn't relieved, they're delighted. That's what makes the difference.
Nice. Love it. We're going to do one last question, but before we do, I want to encourage everyone, if you have a question for the audience, put it please in the chat. We'll do a quick one with Tim, and then I'm hoping that we get a couple from the audience. So please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Tim, Zendesk talks a lot about automating up to 80% of interactions with AI agents. That's a lot. And post-purchase questions, order return, or order status, returns, exchanges are exactly the repetitive volume that's really ripe for this. But there's a line, and you kind of alluded to this, like where automation stops helping and starts frustrating consumers. How are the best brands drawing that line, and where are you coaching them on that?
So I think I'll start and end on this one with some borrowed words of wisdom. The first one is a lovely quote that many of the audience may have heard previously from Steve Jobs. And he said, "You've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. Ultimately, you can't start with the tech." And I think that's where, I mentioned that the use of AI really needs to be fit for purpose, and you really need to think carefully about which interactions you should versus should not automate. The next piece of this speaks to the idea that automation is ultimately a journey. It's not a destination. And there's a temptation amongst many businesses to try and ramp up incredibly fast and overnight see how many of the interactions we can automate. And what we coach our customers through is look at the journey that sits behind this. What are the quick wins, the very repeatable run-of-the-mill routine interactions that are easily automatable? Let's start with those. Let's start with the low-hanging fruit. And that's defined purely by a vision and roadmap that will sit behind your plan towards automation. So in phase one, we look at AI agents with some level of knowledge. A RAG model, for example, is able to take rules, take the overall sort of knowledge base that sits behind your business and translate that into a way that supports the customer. Once you get through that phase two, kind of looking upwards of 30 to 60% automated resolutions. This is where you have higher impact, lower effort use cases. So deploying high impact use cases with customers where there's some level of complexity, perhaps a co-pilot type of engagement helps to include a human in the loop, but ultimately you're dealing with a lot of the, working through a lot of the challenges that a human would take a long time to do, now automated and streamlined through AI. Finally, in phase three, getting more towards a kind of 60 to 80% automated resolution. These are your more complex use cases. This takes a lot of learning. The quality of your data and the quality of your knowledge base becomes critical. And this is where we automate new use cases, channels, languages, or you could even look at addressing new markets in the way that you interact through those automated resolutions. Last thing I'll say, and again, just some borrowed words of wisdoms from Bernard Marr, is that you need to treat AI as a journey. It's not a one-time project. Its success depends on continuous development and human collaboration. Get that right, work with your customers along this journey, and the automation will come later. The magic will speak for itself.
It's so true. Just everyone like picture in your mind if you hear the word AI, you get something conjured today. Now, if you heard that 18 months ago, it looks completely different, not even similar. And if I ask that question in 18 months from now, again, it's going to look totally different. It is a journey, and we're all, as a society and humanity, kind of going on this together. Um, I think we are running a little short on time. So, what I'm going to do is make sure that everyone has a chance to scan the QR code. So, if you want a chance to win any of the awesome swag that we have here, or most importantly, get a free AI or CX audit. So go ahead and scan the QR code, and you can go ahead and get entered, and then obviously book that directly. So I want to really thank our panelists, Tim, Tom, Henry, and Daniel, and honestly everyone from around the world who joined us today. If there's one thread, everything we heard through everything we've heard, it's that the post-purchase experience isn't the end of the sale; it's the start of the next one. Delivery, tracking, returns, and support aren't separate cost centers, but if they're done right, they're actually one connected system that turns first-time buyers into loyal repeat customers. And the brands that win are the ones treating every moment after that buy button as a chance to earn their next purchase. So if you want to request a free CX or AI audit to benchmark your CX against 750 plus brands we support here at TalentPop and get a chance to win in our partner giveaway, go ahead and scan that QR code. For those of you who are wrapping up, please keep an eye out for a follow-up email. We'll obviously include a recording of the webinar. Wishing you smooth deliveries, painless returns, and a whole lot of customers who can't wait to come back. Thanks, y'all, and have a great day.